Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
When it comes to presenting treatment in your practice, how would you rate yourself? How good are you explaining things to a patient, answering their questions? And most importantly, are you a good closer? I say this as one of the major complaints we hear from most new clients is that they have no problem telling a patient what they need, answering their questions about treatment and so on, but they do have issues when it comes to getting the deal done. The patient hedges on finances, the doctor's uncomfortable discussing money, the patient raises objections that the doctor doesn't know how to handle, and so on. That being said, while sales is a multi-step process and each step should be done well, the close is the most important step of the sale. And as such, it's worth knowing how to do it well. And that's what I want to talk about in this week's episode, the close. What it is, what works and what doesn't, and how to improve your ability to close your patients for the treatment that they need. My name is Jeff Bloomberg, and I'm your host. And I think the best place to start is with the definition of what a close is. And I say this because I've seen the subject quite misunderstood. Case in point, let's say you're presenting a patient with 6 crowns and, push comes to shove and they finally say, listen, I don't mean literal push and shove, but you get what I'm saying. It's a saying. So you get to the point where they say, okay, well, I only want to do what insurance covers this year. So you look and you say, well, insurance will help you with 2 of the crowns. It will not help you with the other 4. So then they agree to do the 2 crowns this year. Then they'll do the 2 next year and 2 the year after. So I've asked doctors, if you were in that scenario, how many crowns did you close the patient for? And I would say at least with 80% of the people I've asked, especially if they have not done any of our training, they'll tell me, well, I've closed them for all 6. They say they want to do all 6. They're just going to do 2 this year, 2 next year, and 2 the year after. Well, that's not a close of 6 crowns. That's a close of 2, which we'll get into here in a second as we define this. I've also had people tell me, well, I'm a really good closer. I tell patients what they need and why they need it and things like this. And they say they really want to do it. They're closed. They didn't pay yet and they didn't schedule, but they're closed on doing it. Again, that is not a close. So I think the best place to start out is first taking a look, as I mentioned, at how do we define a close? And the definition I'm going to give you is the same definition we give MGE clients that comes from the Hubbard Management System. And if you're familiar with MGE, you know that we use the Hubbard Management System developed by L. Ron Hubbard as a key part of our curriculum. And Mr. Hubbard's works on management and organization consist of literally millions of words and cover just about any aspect of, communication skills, marketing, management, organization you might conceive of. So if you want to know more about the system and MGE, you can go to our site, mgeonline.com. I'll put a link to it on the episode webpage, and you can check it out where it talks about the Hubbard Management System and L. Ron Hubbard. All right. So how is a close defined in the Hubbard Management System? Well, let's have a look. So here it is. The close, the final and most important stage of the sale. It begins when the salesperson has successfully located and removed their prospect's key objections and arguments and ends with the paperwork finalized and signed and payment received. So if we look at this definition, we see that there's a couple of basic components. The first one is the salesperson has successfully located and removed the prospect's key objection and arguments. And that's a funny one because you might have a patient give you an objection and you've handled it. They give you another objection and you've handled it. Can't this wait? Well, no, not really. Here's why I would be uncomfortable waiting. Okay, they understand and they're willing to move on. So you've located them or they've given them to you and you've handled them. But in certain cases, he uses the word located because in certain cases, they may have an objection that they've not voiced. You may not know it. They're hedging, they're hemming and hawing. You don't quite know why. And really the objection is they're petrified of shots. They hate needles. They hate drills. They hate the sound of the drill. They're afraid it's going to hurt. But they're not saying these things to you. You just notice that things aren't moving. So part of your job when you're closing is to be able to locate the objection. You see there's something going on. You don't quite know what it is. And you ask some questions and then they spit it out. Well, I'm just really scared of drills. I hate getting shots. I almost want to faint every time I see a needle. Then you start to see things like this, and then that gives you a shot at actually handling those. Doesn't mean you're going to handle them all, but you first have to locate it if you want to handle it. So you've located the key objections and arguments, as it says in this definition, right? And you've removed them, as it says there as well. So that's the first component. The second component is where it says here, paperwork is finalized and signed and payment received. So how might that look? So if they're doing patient financing, for example, that means that it's not just that the credit application is filled out and they're approved. It means that everything is signed and payment is just completely sorted out and worked out. Whether you're getting a prepayment or payment in full ahead of time, or you're having their putting deposit down before they show up, whatever arrangement you've made, whatever paperwork had to be signed in order to do that is completely signed and payment has been made. It's been received by your office, or it's set up to be received because things have been signed. You might have patients sign their treatment plan, whatever it is in your practice that you would have them sign. But then also anything that they would have to sign with outside financing or a credit card slip to prove that they were physically there when they paid and things like this. That's all signed. It's done as payment is received. But there's one thing to think about here too. If I come to your practice and I put $10,000 on my credit card to pay in advance for treatment you're going to do on me next week, or I agreed to do patient financing and you're going to start it next week, technically, yes, I fit the definition of a close, but I could very easily unclose if I decide that I don't want to do it, because we've now got a week in between when I've paid and when I'm going to show up. And that's why with salespeople that have worked for our company, one of the things that they have two basic statistics. One is closes and income associated with closes, but also starts, because truthfully, because that's still the salesperson's job. The sale ends when the patient has paid and has actually started the treatment. That's when the sale ends. So starts have to be a key part of sales as well. It's a part of the close in that sense, especially if you're taking a prepayment or an advance payment, because that payment is in danger of, being gone if the person doesn't show up to do the treatment. So you don't want to just focus on, oh, hey, I just got $10,000. It's like, no, the person, and really, why are we getting the person to prepay it? So that they actually do the treatment, not to just get them to prepay. That's sort of like a component of having them prepay. That's not the end all be all. The end all be all is that they actually got the treatment done. So once that treatment starts, the sale is over. So it's important that there's just as much, hate to use the word pressure because it's probably not the right word. Importance is a better word on getting the person started as there is on having them pay. And as you can see from this definition, there's a large difference between explaining treatment and answering questions and a close. Explaining how a crown works and how you're going to prep it and why they need a crown, or what's going on with their tooth that requires that it needs a crown, or why they need an implant. And answering questions, is it going to hurt? Is this, is that? That's part of the sale. That's part of communication. That's getting them, that's educating them so that they actually understand it and they want it, but that's not the close. The close is very different. That's where you're going in there, you're grabbing those objections, you're handling them so that they finally are willing to just move ahead with whatever you're telling them to do. So when it comes to closing, what works and what doesn't? So I want to go over three things that I've observed. I've done a lot of sales in my career. We've trained a lot of salespeople. I'm going to go over three basic things I've seen that do not work. And then I want to go over 8 things that do. The first 2 things I have found that don't work are kind of based off of what I believe to be false information, right? Like false data. It's maybe worked for somebody at one point in time, but it's not something that's like a law or something that you can rely upon that works universally. The first of which is that you need to use special words in order to close somebody. I remember somebody telling me once that, if you use the word because, people tend to put more importance on whatever it is that you're explaining, as if it's this magic incantation that's going to make people listen better. The words that are said, some of them are important, but there's a heck of a lot of things that are a lot more important than the words you use when you're talking to somebody. Obviously, you want to use words that explain what you're trying to tell them, but there's no special word or words that's going to make a person more apt to close and sign up for whatever you're selling. The second thing is, and this one's been around for a long time, and I don't know where it started. I heard it for the first time back in the 80s. So I know I'm dating myself there. But the idea is that when you're explaining something and you're trying to close somebody, so you tell them, okay, it's going to cost $10,000 and you should do it right now. At that point, you're supposed to shut up and not say anything. And I remember, I forget who this was, but it was the first person who talks loses. That's total bogus. I've talked plenty of times and still gotten a close. It's not, that being said, sometimes salespeople do talk a little bit too much when they should be listening, but that's not a hard, fast rule. I mean, if I were to tell somebody, it's sort of natural progression. If I were to tell somebody, okay, so this is going to be $10,000, how would you like to take care of this? Well, I've asked them a question, so I'm expecting them to answer the question. So yeah, I'm not going to talk because I just said something. But if I said, all right, so that would be $10,000. How would you normally take care of this? And they just sort of clammed up, didn't say anything. Well, then I might say something else. Hey, are you okay over there? Is everything okay? I notice I just told you how much this cost and you haven't said anything since. Well, yeah, I'm really mad that it's this expensive. Whatever they're going to say. It's good communication that's more important here. It's not like some magic formula. If I shut up and don't say anything, all of a sudden it's going to close. I've also seen people do that and not get it close. They say it's $10,000. How would you like to take care of this? And they shut up. And the person says, well, I really don't want to do it right now. Okay, well, the shutting up didn't really work. So as far as this being a hard, fast thing that's going to make your closes get better, there's the common sense aspect of it. If you ask them a question, then obviously you should shut up, because I say that in the nice way, because you do want them to answer you. I mean, that's kind of silly. If you go, that'll be $10,000, and how do you want to take care of it? And then you keep talking, that doesn't make sense. You've asked them a question. But it's not a magic formula that's going to make people close. The third thing that I've seen that doesn't work is offering discounts to get the close. Now, this is a funny one, because really what a discount should be, like let's say you offer some type of a prepayment discount. Let's say you offer a 5% prepayment discount. You don't want the discount to be the reason the person is doing the service or treatment, okay? You don't want that. You want the discount to be that last little bit of, push that kind of throws them over the edge to make them decide to do it now. They want to do it. They're going to do it. Look, let me see if I can get a loan from my bank, blah, blah, blah. And you go, well, look, if you pay today, you can save 5%. You could just put it on a credit card. Oh, okay. Well, I'll just go ahead and do that. I can save 5%. In other words, it's that last little bit of help to sort of move them along. It should not be used as the motivation to get them to do that, because that's when you sort of open up Pandora's box when you get into that type of thing. And I've seen doctors who do this. I've seen lots of industries that do this, where people start to wheel and deal. Okay, we'll do a crown for you for $1,100 and this person's $1,200, and I'll give you this one for $1,000. Once in a while, fine. If it becomes a regular thing and then you're worried that patient A, who got a crown for $1,000, is going to be talking to patient B, who got a crown for $900, you're doing something wrong. Okay? Because of your price structure, not because of whatever their insurance pays. I'm talking about your actual price structure. So for me, if it's a discount, it's to reward the person for acting fast. It's that last little bit of push to get them to move, but it's not the reason they should pay. The reason they should pay is because they want to do whatever it is I'm telling them to do. That's the reason I'm using the discount to, spur more immediate action. So those are three basic things I've seen that don't work when it comes to closing. So let's take a look at some things that do. And I have 8 of them. Number 1, keep the focus on the patient. It's not, because you can get to a point where maybe a sale's been going really well and you're really excited about it and you really want the close, like this sort of abstract concept. I want to close this deal. Well, you have to be able to sort of sit in the other side in your prospect's chair for a minute. So you have to be willing to, assume their viewpoint. This isn't all about you getting a close for the patient. This is all about them. So your focus should stay on them. I also wouldn't get into the frame of mind that I have to close this. I have to close this, because, you really don't have to close anything. All right. And truthfully, there's going to be people you're not going to close. You're going to have some failed closes. And there's people you probably don't want to close that are going to be too much trouble. It should be about them. You genuinely want to help this person. So that's where your focus is. You want to help this person. And therefore, in order to help them, they need to sign up for this treatment plan and get started on it right away. Because again, the bigger, most important thing is not that they pay. It's that they actually do the treatment that they need. Because, that's what that's all about. It's getting them the treatment they need. They have to pay in order to get it, because that's the economics of the situation. But if your focus is just, I have to close this deal, what tends to happen is you tend to change your purpose at that point. Your purpose should be, when you're sitting with somebody, is I want to help them. Which means if you honestly have a patient who, let's say there's just a real problem, they treat your staff badly, you really don't want them in your practice and you don't want to help them, you really need to evaluate that for yourself. Maybe you need to dismiss them. Maybe you need to review the Dental Practice Act in your state or province if you're listening from Canada and take a look at how you go about dismissing them. Talk to your malpractice carrier. Because why treat somebody that you genuinely don't personally want to help? Okay, that's just my viewpoint on this. You have to do what is real to you, okay? But so if your purpose isn't to help and your purpose is I need a close, you can see how that gets a little bit weird. Their purpose is not to get you a close. Their purpose is to get whatever help they need. So if your purpose is to help them, your purposes are shared. If your purpose is I need a close, unless that's their purpose, I came here today so Dr. Smith can make more money, well, then you're going to have a problem. So keep the focus on them. It's about the patient. That's the first thing. Second thing, obviously, communication has to be good. This is where communication skills come in handy. We do a ton of training on this, like the MGE Communication and Sales Seminars. I put a link to it on the episode webpage. We also have a lot of our sales training on our online platform, DDS Success. I'll put that on the episode webpage. A link to that if you want to check it out. I also have a discount on that if you want to check it out. That's in the link. But the communication has to be good. And by that, remember, communication's a two-way street. It's not that you're very good at saying what it is they need. You have to also be willing to hear them. So people are going to object to things, and sometimes it's due to lack of understanding. Sometimes it's due to a different way of thinking, but you have to be willing to take all comers. Maybe they just, have a different viewpoint on dentistry than you're used to. And you're going to have patients that are really excited about taking care of their oral health and other patients who need to be educated up to that point. So no two people are the same. If the communication's good, that's not a problem, which means you have to be willing to receive that communication. When they give you an objection, you don't inside go, oh, God, oh gosh, they gave me an objection. It's be willing to hear that objection. Be willing to hear it, be willing to understand it, and be willing to handle it. Maybe it's an objection you can pull apart very easily in a very nice way. Maybe it's something that you find a bit challenging. Maybe it's something that's just a way of blowing you off. I've talked about this before. When a patient says or a person says, I want to think about it, that's just a nice way of saying no. And people have asked me, what do you say to a person when they say that to you? It really depends on the person. I've had people tell me, well, Jeff, I really want to think about this. And I'll say, listen, whether you do this or not is up to you, obviously, because this is about them, right? But I've noticed when people tell me they want to think about things, usually there's something that they have their attention on or their mind is on that they're not saying, okay? Because nobody really thinks about anything, okay? So what is it that you're concerned about? It does not matter what it is. Again, I don't care if we're doing this now or never, but I'm here to help you. So what is it you have your attention on? And then I'll get the real considerations now. What is it they're worried about? What is the real objection? Remember, I have to locate those objections because sometimes they're not super obvious, right? So it really depends on the person. Someone may say they want to think about it, and I'll just acknowledge that. I totally understand. It's a big decision. And then I'll just keep talking to them about what it is they need. I understand it's a big decision. Now, let me show you one other point about why this is important for you to do now. I've heard them, I've listened to them, I've acknowledged them, and I've moved on. So it's something to think with. You want to make sure that you're not just good at explaining, but you're also good at listening and hearing what the person has to say so they feel like that you're actually someone they can talk to comfortably. Next thing is, and obviously this isn't the close, but the early part of the sale has to be good. The earlier part, you have to be able to explain the treatment that they need well. You need to be able to answer questions about it in a way that is accessible to them. And keep in mind, I'm not asking you to go to, a dental meeting or a study club and explain what a treatment plan is for a specific patient where you're going to use a bunch of dental, terminology. You're explaining it in a way that is accessible to the patient. If you're going to use new terminology because it's vital to explain what's going on, you define it as you go so they understand what you're saying. You're not just throwing out big words that they have no idea what it means. So by explaining it, you're good at explaining it to them in a way they understand. And you're also good at fielding any questions they may have about these things. Now, I say this not because, quite a few people don't have a problem with this, but a lot of people do. And this is sort of, if I were to train somebody to present treatment, this would be the first thing that I would get them knowledgeable about and comfortable with is talking to a patient, explaining what is wrong, explaining what they want to do, and answering questions. Even before I got them into, how you're going to handle the finances or things like this. Because if you can't do that, you're not going to have a person who's going to understand anything for when you get to the finances. You get to the point where you go, hey, do you want this treatment plan? They go, well, I don't even know what it is. Okay. So you have to be good at explaining it and, giving the person the knowledge they need in order to make an informed decision. Next point I kind of just alluded to is the person has to actually want the treatment in order to close. This is where the discount thing gets a little bit weird. If, I'm selling you something that you don't want, but I'm going to give you a discount on it, but you don't want it, what difference is that going to make? You don't even want it in the first place. You have to actually want it first. It's sort of a basic requirement. And this is something to know. If you're at the point where you're discussing finances and it's just back and forth and back and forth on the finances. Wow, that's really expensive. I don't know if I can afford it. How much would it be per month? Oh, that's too high. It's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What that tells you is the person is not motivated to do it. If someone is really motivated to do something, they will move mountains, at least to the, to the best of their ability. All right. So you might want to ask the patient or whoever, if you're not selling a patient, let's say you're just selling in general, but specifically we're talking about presenting treatment here. But you might want to stop for a second if this is happening and just go to the patient and ask them, listen, do you really want this treatment? And see what they say. Well, if the answer is, well, yeah, I guess, well, they don't want it. And that's what you need to handle at that point. It's not a money issue. You may think it's a money issue because that's all you're talking about, but that isn't the problem. The problem is they don't want it. Okay. If the answer is, I absolutely want the treatment plan, but blank, then you start to find out what it is you need to handle. I absolutely want the treatment plan, but here's the problem. If I were to pay for this now, my wife's going to be really upset with me or my husband's going to be really upset with me. Now you have the objection that you need to address and you need to handle. You've located it for the purposes of the close. But if it's just going back and forth, just try that. Go back and go, hey, listen, do you even want this? Do you really want, or not do you even, I would rather say, do you really want this treatment? Do you understand why you need it? Well, yeah, I get why I need it, but I don't want it. Well, then that's what you need to handle. So just keep that in mind as you're going through. If the close starts to stick and it's not flowing, that might be the problem. Next thing is you have to be willing to be persistent, and you have to do this within reason. This goes back to a couple points. The first of which, making sure you have adequate time to present. Okay. So let's say, and this is where you might have a default amount of time you schedule for presentations, 20 or 30 minutes. And, you've talked to a patient, you've done their exam, and let's say you're bringing them back for a presentation. You might go, wow, this is at least going to take me 40, 50 minutes, or maybe it's an FMR case or an all-on-X case. You need an hour or hour plus, whatever. Try to assess that to the best of your ability. You'll never be 100%, but you'll get good at this to where you can pretty much estimate it pretty well. But let's say you've allotted 20 minutes for a presentation, and, you're 20 minutes in and you're not even close. And now you're 30 minutes. You're 10 minutes behind on your schedule. Now it's starting to approach 35, 40. You're starting to blow up the office schedule because you feel like you're just so close to getting a close. This is where you have to be careful. Okay. You got to do what you got to do. You got to be smart about this, but I wouldn't want to blow up my schedule for, in an attempt to close a treatment plan. Because I've seen this happen. So you want to make sure you're somewhat accurate on assessing how much time that you need. If I found myself in a situation where I'm 20 minutes into a 20-minute appointment and I go, gosh, this is going to take me an hour, most likely I'm going to find a reason to schedule to talk to the person later or at another time. Or I'm going to see what I can do to maybe buy myself another 10, 15 minutes and see if I can get it done then. But you want to, I've seen some people who go, I'm just going to stick with it till it's done, and then they destroy their schedule for the day. So I would not do that. You want to make sure that your schedule flows. Most patients are going to fit within the parameters that you've originally established for them, assuming you have a good idea of how long each presentation is going to take you. Most people for smaller treatment plans can get done in 20, 30 minutes. But don't make this a habit where it starts to blow up your schedule. So you got to be persistent in that regard, but to a point, right? But by being persistent, I mean, you have to be willing to stick in there. It's not a duel. You're not fighting with the patient, but you have to, first off, let's say, we've got a few conditions here. You have this patient, you really want to help them. You're really excited about it, and it's important to you to help them. So as you try to help somebody, they will raise objections. And in a lot of cases, not always, some of the objections they bring up are what created the problem that they are having in the first place. Let me give you an example. So let's say a person has a tendency, they don't like dealing with their teeth. They freak out about having to go to the dentist. They don't even want to look at their teeth because they're scared something might be wrong with them, something like this, right? You've probably seen patients like this. So now you're talking to them about doing something about their teeth, right? They need some dental treatment in order to fix their teeth. Well, that lack of ability to confront their teeth is the same thing is what's caused their dental problems in the first place. Okay. So now that's exactly the wall you're going to run into when it comes to getting them to fix their teeth. And I've used objections like that to gently point out to a person that we're both running into this barrier and together we can overcome it. So look, this is what got you in this situation in the first place. So look, I'm here to help you over this barrier or through this barrier to actually get you to get the help that you need. I've done this with clients before. They need some service or something like this or a particular action, that we offer. And let's say they're a procrastinator. So then we get down to closing. What are they going to bring up? They're going, oh, let me wait. Well, that's what got them in the mess in the first place. So I could sit here and go in agreement with them and let them just continue falling down into the abyss, or I can go, listen, let me just point something out. Part of the reason you're in this mess is you've procrastinated, okay? So I'm here to help you over that barrier. Together, you and I will overcome this barrier so you no longer procrastinate. So let's get this done. So if I've got a good basis of communication with this person and I'm willing to stay persistent, so I'm not going to just hear that first objection and wilt like a flower. I'm going to stay there because what's keeping me there is the desire to help them. If I had no desire to help them, or if it was just all about getting a close, it would not come across as genuine. And I want to stay genuine because otherwise I hate myself and I hate my job. So I don't want to do that. I have to stay genuine. So if I really genuinely want to help this person, I'm going to stick with them. They're going to give me all kinds of reasons they don't want to do it. And if I'm convinced this is what this person really needs, which in your case, you got a diagnosis, you have x-rays, you have charting, you have et cetera, well, then you got to stick with them to get the help that they need. Again, within the time parameters that you've been given. Okay. And at times you can use those objections, to your advantage. They don't have time. Well, that's why we're in this mess. You haven't been in 5 years. So here we are. So let's make some time to, handle you here. So those are things you can do. But again, remember, you actually have to want to help the person. All right. Next point. You have to make them participate in the close. Make is probably a strong word. You have to allow their participation. So I've brought up numerous times before that the doctor should get into finances when they're presenting treatment. And then look, there's different variances of this. We have clients who have a super well-trained staff and those clients can close and their staff do most of the closing. And that's great. But those clients are not held hostage to the fact that their staff can close. If one of those staff had to move out of state, the doctor could step back in and close if they need to or needed to, right? So they're not being held hostage by the fact that they don't know how to do it. You have to know how to close. So ideally, the doctor should not only just tell a patient how much it costs, they should get into the financial discussion a little bit. But now, part of the problem that happens with the financial discussions, and I'm not going to get into this too heavily, I have covered it in prior episodes, is these days it's all about third-party financing and patient financing. So it's, you're talking to me, Jeff, so your treatment plan is $10,000 and we have this no-interest payment plan. You just fill out this application and you have 2 years to pay it back. My problem's been solved for me. You've told me exactly what I need to do and just fill out this application. Now I might go, well, Jeff, what's wrong with that? Well, what if Jeff gets disapproved? Hate talking about myself in third person, but there you go. What if Jeff gets disapproved for financing? Then what? And I haven't participated in solving this dilemma here. So really, it should be, Jeff, your treatment plan is $10,000, as you can see on the treatment plan form. How would you normally take care of something like this? Make me participate. Because I'm going to say any number of things. Well, I could put it on a credit card. Could I make payments? You might ask me, what kind of payments would you make? Well, I can give you half now and half next month. You go, well, look, if you pay all now, you can save 5% if you put it on a credit card. Oh, okay, I'll do that. Right? There's different ways of handling this conversation, but I have to participate. Okay? Which means, remember the whole idea of communications, it's not just you talking, it's also you listening. You have to let me talk. Otherwise, you're going to tell me everything I need to do. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, especially if I don't get approved for financing. Well, then we're in trouble. Whereas if I gave you a solution from the beginning and we ended up going the third-party financing route, we always have something to go back to if third-party financing falls through. The other thing to think with, and again, we work with a lot of these third-party financing companies. They, sponsor events and we've done different things with them and they're very cool people, a lot of the different companies. But generally the merchant charges on that is pretty high. If you gave me a choice of would I rather accept $10,000 on a Visa card or $10,000 that's going to cost me 10% to accept, so I'm only going to get $9,000, I'd rather eat the 3% with the Visa card than the $1,000 with the patient financing. And in many cases, patients will just put it on a credit card or write you a check or, transfer the money. So make the patient participate. Make, again, is a strong word. Have the patient participate. All right, last 2 points here. Point number 7, start the service as close to immediately as possible. So you've just closed me for whatever treatment that you want me to do. You have to give me the idea that I am starting as soon as, number 1, you want me on the schedule for my prep appointment. Let's say it's crowns. I should get them done today if possible, if not tomorrow or the next day. It should not be next week, the week after next. It should be within 24 to 48 hours, 3 days max you want me on that schedule. Okay. Otherwise, you're giving me way too much time to think about it or have somebody talk me out of it. And again, you might go, well, is the motivation just to get the person to pay and close? No, you're trying to solve the person's dental problem. You don't want somebody who has no knowledge of their situation talking them out of it so that they do nothing. We want to get this treatment plan done, which was what this is all about in the first place. So you want to get this started and going as quick as humanly possible. Just like if you're having them prepay, you have them prepay today and they're on the schedule tomorrow. Now, you might even do a little something else. We've had clients where once the patient agrees, they've worked out how they're going to pay, they've prepaid, they've filled out their patient financing forms, and they're on the schedule tomorrow, the day after the prep appointment. They'll take impressions, they'll do a scan, they'll do something to give the patient the concept that they have begun this journey now. So it's not like something that if they decide, if you didn't do that, let's say you just took my money and said, bye, Jeff, we'll see you in 2 days. Well, in my mind, I haven't started yet. Whereas if you go, okay, good, Jeff, we're going to take some impressions or we're going to do a scan. In my mind, I've now kind of started. Sure, you haven't started yet. And if push came to shove and I wanted to bail, you'd have to give me my money back. But in my mind, I've started. So it's a journey I'm already on, which makes me that much less willing to stop. Okay. So you want to start as soon as humanly possible with the actual treatment, but then you could even do a couple things today to kind of give the patient the idea in their mind that this journey has begun. And the last point is, part of the definition or inherent in the definition of the close, if I read this line again, it says the paperwork finalized and signed and payment received. I mean, look, lots of people can say lots of things, but there comes a point where the rubber has to hit the road. This is either going to go or it's not. I can tell you, yeah, sure, I definitely want to do this. Yeah, I definitely want to do it. Yeah, in a couple days, I'll bring you a check. I'm not closed. All right, so you want to have what we call, this is what we call a test of reach, By reach, I mean the person's willingness to do something. So you're testing it. All right, so look, we have a couple different ways you can pay. You can prepay and save 5%. You can do this, you can do that, whatever, half down, whatever your finance policy is in the office. Do they do it? They either do or they don't. Because again, unless payment has been received in some iteration, whether it's a contract for financing or a deposit or half down, third down, whatever it is, prepay, until that's done, I don't have a close. So I'm going to test that reach to see if I really have somebody who is truly interested and wanting to do what it is that I am recommending that they do. Okay, good. So we want to get you started. Our policy is you have to put 20% down to reserve your time on the schedule. Oh, I didn't realize that. Well, let me check a few things and I'll call you back. It's not closed. Okay. Now in certain cases, that might be a valid objection. They can't spend the money. My favorite is that people forget their wallet. I mean, let's just be real for a second. How often have you left your house and forgotten your wallet? We've all done it at least a couple times in our life. But for some reason, that amnesia kicks in when somebody goes to a doctor's office, which is why I don't totally buy it. There might be some legit reason why they can't pay today, but most cases they could, and they can do whatever it is that they have to do to move forward. But that's part of it. If I don't get that taken care of, I don't have a close. And that gives me a really good gauge as to whether this person is, for lack of a better word or phrase, for real or not. Otherwise, the person can be saying all the right things with the intention of trying to just, get out of the office as quickly as possible and not do anything. So there you have those 8 points. We went over the 3 that don't work, the 8 that do. Again, my suggestion, if you want to learn to close better, I would recommend that you check out the MGE Communication and Sales Seminars. They're 3-day seminars. I'll put the link to it on the episode webpage. And again, we have some of that training on our online platform as well. I'll put that link up as well. You can also, if you want to get a gauge for how good you are, or how productive your office is, we do offer a free analysis called the Production Analyzer. I'll put a link to it on the episode webpage. You fill out a couple of points and then you speak to a practice management specialist and they can kind of give you an idea of where you're doing well and where you might be lacking. So yeah, downloads on the episode webpage, links on the episode webpage. I hope this helps, folks. I hope you go back and you can use some of this stuff and start doing better as soon as possible. Again, you have to use whatever, within your good judgment, what you think might work and might not work for your practice. Again, in any event, I do hope that it helps you. If you want to find out more about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Folks, have a great week, and we will see you at the next episode.